Forward to this session with great anticipation. My first degree was taken from the University of Wisconsin, where I was a major in history, and never taught any of this, even though I'm a second-generation American, by the way, even though I specialized in world history and the history of World War II. But the motto of the University of Wisconsin contains these words: the continual sifting and winnowing by which alone the truth can be found. And I have viewed my own life as a truth seeker for a very long time. John also tells us, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." And I think that is why we are here today. We are in the great tradition of both the United States and our Constitution, and the tradition of Poland's first Constitution. But I can guarantee you that most Americans do not know the nexus between those two constitutions and how what happened in our country carried the flame of liberty forward, when in fact what happened in Poland was exactly the reverse in terms of what happened at the political level, though the flame of that liberty was carried by her people even until today. So we really are history has been waiting for us, and waiting for us to be here today at Case Western Reserve in this great law school. I think that for those of you who aren't of Polish heritage, but also love liberty, I like to say that the Poles love it more. And if you're lucky to have a piece of that heritage in you, you know how to persevere. It is not therefore surprising that in the Congress of the United States today, 3 of the 4 most senior members in the House and Senate are all of Polish American heritage. In the House where I serve, it was mentioned that I'm now the senior Democratic woman in the U.S. House, but Congressman John Dingell of Michigan, also of Polish heritage, is the senior male member. And in the Senate of the United States, Senator Barbara Mikulski is the senior woman. We only lack the man over there in the Senate. But it's very interesting, because I think that that quality of perseverance comes from great hardship. And Poles know how to persevere. And Polish Americans have the duality that they live with, where perseverance and the love of liberty are first. I happen to be the author of legislation that took us almost 2 decades to build the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. That's a story unto itself, but it is an incomplete story. And I will tell you, when we first began drafting that legislation back in the 1980s, we had hoped that a part of that legislation would include a museum. Because I had seen a museum in Caen, France, during my travels, and I said, that Museum of Peace is something that should be replicated in the United States. The museum did not survive the bill. We wanted to actually build it in a section under the memorial, if any of you visited the memorial, that could be a room like this. And we would have artifacts, we would have a way of people coming 100 years from now and understanding that the greatest legacy of the 20th century was the victory for our country of liberty over tyranny. We still haven't adequately represented that. But we're talking with people and foundations that have been set up. And we do have a Veterans History Project that is part of the Library of Congress, where we're trying to assemble personal stories. Maybe some of you and your families have contributed to that. We now have over, I think it's close to 200,000 American stories that are a part of that. But what I learned from that project was that some of the bravest Americans I knew could not have their stories placed in the archives because they were not born in the United States. One of my dearest friends, whose pin I wear today, who was a soldier in the Polish cavalry and served 2 years, was actually at Mokra when the Nazi tanks came over the border in September of 1939, September 1st, 1939, and lost 75% of the soldiers in that unit, and then went to fight on the other side of Poland 3 weeks later when the Communists and Red Army invaded from the east, and then served in the underground for 2 years until a mistake was made by one of his colleagues who ultimately was beheaded. And he was revealed and was then placed at Auschwitz and Gross-Rosen and Leitmeritz. Even though he'd been an American citizen and his daughter had been the valedictorian of our class at St. Ursula Academy in Toledo, Ohio, and had raised his family with his wife who'd been tortured at Ravensbrück, their story could not be told because they were not born in the United States, they were naturalized citizens. And I came to fully realize as a member of Congress, oh my God, how incomplete our history really is. And what can I do as a citizen of our country to help to make American history complete and the history of freedom and the fight for freedom complete. And I realized, as many of you do, what great effort that still takes. And that's part of why we are here today. Because I really believe as a member of the House, it takes a long time to do anything of significance. But if we are to be a democratic country, and that's with a small d, that means that people have to be empowered themselves to take their history forward. And we have to find ways and means to do that locally. The last point that I really want to make before lunch is that this is a very important conference to me personally, and I feel very deeply the incompleteness of history. And if any, I think to myself, if any nation can do this, surely America, the United States, is the place that can help to push knowledge forward. That is our responsibility as a free people. But as I look at those who may be here from Poland and are of Polish heritage, certainly a nation that cracked the enigma during World War II, certainly a nation that produced Marie Curie, certainly a nation that wrote the most democratic constitution in Europe in 1791, certainly that nation can also meet the challenge of a new era and make history complete. Thank you so very much.